ever been to a small town that didn't seem to realize it was small? A place that turned out to be so much more than you might have expected. Just one of the myriad dots on a map that aren't called out, unless you get real close. The sort that surprise and delight, and maybe even astound. The sort that could have quietly faded into the margins of history, yet managed to overcome hardships and challenges and a monumental tragedy to become even more. Maybe it's because the heart of the place and the people there is so big that it couldn't be contained. Because it had so much to share with the rest of the world, so much light to give.
Corning, New York is a unique place. It's a really small town that is so rich in history, technology, arts, and culture.
I'm in love with the history of Corning. We are an industrial town that was built on the back of glass blowers.
Back in the 19th century, the big industry was lumbering, and people invested in the land because of that lumber, and the quality of that wood was pretty extraordinary. And it was put on rafts and floated down the Chemung River to the Susquehanna and then to Baltimore, where it was put on ships and shipped around the world. The developers realized that they had all these people who were employed here in the lumber industry who were going to run out of jobs. So they went to New York City and they bargained with the Brooklyn Flint Glass Company to come to Corning because we had the employees that they needed. We had the river to transport, and ultimately we had the railroad system, which came right through Corning.
After the move in 1868, the company changed its name to Corning Flint Glass, later known as the Glass Works, and today as Corning Incorporated. Despite the hundreds of new jobs the move created and the quality of the glass being made, during that first decade, the company almost didn't make it. But in 1877, they came to the aid of the expanding railroad industry when Charles Houghton designed a special railroad signal lens that didn't get all bogged down with dirt, snow, and ice like the old ones did. And then, just a couple years later,
Thomas Edison came to Corning all those years ago for a maker of his glass envelope for light bulbs, which revolutionized the world.
Corning, through time, has provided a lot of really, really important technologies and products that we use around the world every day.
I think most people don't realize what a role glass plays in their daily lives.
The fiber for fiber optics. It includes glassware, the glass on the front of your cell phone, the Gorilla Glass, or the glass on the screens that we use to watch television or on our computer monitors.
Glass is one of those incredibly unique materials that we use to solve any number of problems.
Glass is all of these things. It's science, it's industry, and it's art.
Glass is in the veins of just about anyone who lives here.
Corning came here and became established and then became a real hub for a lot of immigrant population coming here to work in the factories.
My grandfather emigrated from Italy and worked for Corning Incorporated and the refractories plant. My dad emigrated, worked at Sullivan Park. My husband just retired from Corning after 40 years. So the blue blood of Corning runs deep in our veins.
Without Corning Incorporated, we never would have been the city that we are. It's based all on glass. There's a lot of small glass shops. Even my uncle next door, he had the cow's glass and used to do glass engraving. And it's thanks to glass, and it's basically thanks to the river because that's what brought Corning here.
The river is the reason Corning is here. It floated up the Hudson, over the Erie Canal, down through the lakes and the Chemung Canal to here.
It is wonderful to have a river that runs right through the middle of our downtown.
It's always been a very vibrant part of this area and has made Corning what it is.
Growing up with the Chemung, I never gave it a tremendous amount of thought. We would fish off a Centerway Bridge as kids or go down and walk along the dike.
It's a bit ironic that such a vital aspect of the community and the company could suddenly threaten to destroy both. But that's exactly what happened in June of 1972.
June 23rd, 1972 was a transformative day for this city.
I was down here as a 4-year-old, staying with my grandparents for the first time away from home. And my grandfather had pulled around the car, but the water was already at the level of the baseboard of the car.
I was on the north side and watched this 8-foot wave of water come down Pulteney Street and take out McDonald's. You can't imagine the devastation that water does to a community when it floods until you're witnessing it.
When you look at pictures from that day after, when the water surged over its banks and really created a massive flash flood through this whole thing, you couldn't tell where the river was.
At one point, it was almost a mile wide.
Everything was underwater. The museum was underwater. Our biggest factory was underwater. You had cars floating down the street.
The effect that it had on the community as a whole. People lost their houses. They lost their livelihood. They lost most of what they had.
And 18 people lost their lives.
It certainly was a traumatic event.
And the town was just decimated.
The infrastructure of the city was destroyed.
But that wouldn't be the end of the story. Not for the glass company, and not for the people who called Corning home.
The character of Corning is one of resilience and innovation.
I guess the thing that I remember the most is the oneness of the community. We were all battling the same monster, if you will. There was a certain bond that everybody had at that time, working together, neighbors helping neighbors.
The people of the city joined together to rebuild. And it didn't happen everywhere, and it didn't have to happen, but it happened here.
When this city was so devastated by the flood, there was nothing that we needed more than a leader.
After the flood, Corning Incorporated took the bull by the horns.
Amo Houghton has really been the focal point that you hear about, but the fact that they didn't leave town, the Corning Incorporated, they said, this is our home, we're going to invest, we're going to keep it our home.
Amo gave us the courage to move forward and the message of we're here to stay and we're here to support you, and he did that in every way conceivable.
Corning's a great example of how that it did bring the community together and made it even better.
Prior to the flood, there was a plan on the table to demolish all of Market Street and rebuild in a kind of 1970s revitalization. Interestingly enough, it was 3 very dedicated women who had been vocal about wanting to restore Market Street to its real historical roots.
We were poised and ready to revitalize downtown, and soon we had a whole downtown that was really changing in a very positive way.
There were a few visionary people who had immense impact in all kinds of different realms. And that's something that makes me feel very proud of the area, and it allows me to understand the impact that each individual can have on the city.
Market Street was used as the prototype for the National Trust Main Street program, not only for its revitalization, but also for the events that were created.
A lot of people here in the area are from all over the world, and that really brings a richness of culture. You'll notice festivals around town celebrating different traditions, and I think that's really nice about a small town like Corning still has that cultural diversity and experience.
A real highlight for a lot of visitors in this area is a visit to the Corning Museum of Glass. Now, it's obvious that glass is an important part of our history here, so having the world's most famous and most honored glass museum here is really a perfect fit. In fact, glassmakers often call the Corning Museum of Glass Mecca.
Most people that you talk to will come across as an ambassador to the city of Corning, not only for its glass, but for its culture, for the cultural arts that we have, for the way of life that we have, for our location in the Finger Lakes.
This whole area is fantastic for families. It's fantastic for people who love the outdoors. You have this beautiful downtown, but you're also very close to the Finger Lakes, which are a real gem for our region. Lots of hiking trails, biking trails, and the opportunity to get out of the hustle and bustle of city life.
Not only do you come here and find beautiful architecture and a very cohesive downtown, but you also come here and find friendly merchants and people who want to do business and people who want to make you feel welcome when you come to Corning.
Even if you've never heard of Corning before, there's a good chance it has been part of your life without you realizing it. Those Pyrex casserole bowls that always come out during holiday celebrations. The dishes and plates everyday meals were served on. Television, computer, and cell phone screens. The fiber optics that keep you connected with the rest of the world. Maybe that's part of the reason why, when you visit the town, you feel like you found your way home. That sense of familiarity, and the people who live there. The people who treat you like one of their own.